I landed on Givrin with nothing but the clothes on my back and a rule. No shirt, no weapons, just one absurd guideline I'd impose on myself, and a galaxy that was about to learn how stupidly stubborn I could be. No one dies today except maybe me. Sure, it didn't make sense. It wasn't supposed to. But this wasn't a place where logic applied. It was a war-torn mess of alien politics and shattered dreams. Givrin was a wasteland now, a far cry from the glittering trade hub it once was. What the Galactic Union couldn't save, Seraphine's AI had wiped clean with cold precision. It was all one big purge. Everything organic, everything real, erased by a digital god with zero empathy. I staggered to crowded streets, sweat dripping down my chest, the air thick with the smell of burning debris and metal. The rule was in place for a reason. I needed control. Life had kicked me down far too many times. But this was different. I wasn't just running from my past anymore. I was running from myself. A shout rang out ahead. Some idiot had gotten himself tangled up with a group of local thugs. Yeah, just the sort of thing I didn't need right now. But when you have the power to flatten people with a single punch and nothing to do but kill time, you end up picking fights. That's how it works. I slipped into the scene like a shadow, a grin curling at the corners of my lips. 3 thugs, alien in shape, but humanoid enough to be called thugs, were looming over the guy. He wasn't dead yet, but that didn't mean they wouldn't get to it eventually. "Hey!" I called, my voice lazy, but loud enough to turn heads. This the part where you beg for mercy? I don't usually do mercy, but today's special. One of the thugs, a grizzled creature with tusks protruding from his lower jaw, gave me the once-over, then snorted. "And you are—" His accent was thick, but the challenge was clear enough. I sighed, shifted my weight from one foot to the other. "I'm Alex Hunter, the guy who's going to make you regret that snort." There were no theatrics, no extended monologue. I wasn't interested in a fight. I was interested in one thing only. "Here's the thing," I said, stepping forward and raising my hands in a mock apology. "I have this rule. Can't touch anyone unless you're ready to dance." The thugs blinked at me like I just sprouted a second head. "Is this some kind of joke?" The tusked one spat. "You come here to die?" "No," I said. "Just want you to dance." "Does this human think he's funny?" One of them grunted, swinging a crude knife at my face. I caught it easily, not even flinching, but my fingers tightened around the blade in a flash of irritation. It was pointless. Not the fight, but the whole damn act. These idiots didn't know how to play. They didn't understand that if I wanted to leave here without getting my hands dirty, I'd have to get creative. "All right, if you won't dance." I snapped the knife out of the thug's hand and shoved him backward. "We can skip to the part where I win." A flash of movement. Another thug charging from the side. I stepped sideways, tripping him with one leg, sending him sprawling into the dirt. "Anyone else?" The last thug eyed me warily. He wasn't sure whether to charge or run, and I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of a decision. I grabbed his wrist before he could act, twisting it behind his back, forcing him to the ground. "See!" I panted, kneeling next to him. "No one has to die today. Unless you're really, really bad at dancing." A pair of bright purple eyes watched me from the shadows. I didn't notice her at first, but then the air seemed to shift. The tension that had been in my chest loosened. Just for a second, I felt her before I saw her. Her name was Cielware, Maltorian princess rebel leader, and a person who clearly had zero interest in my ridiculous antics. She had been watching the whole thing from a distance, her gaze sharp, unimpressed. "You're Alex Hunter?" she asked, her voice cool and smooth, like steel wrapped in velvet. Her tone was dismissive, but there was curiosity beneath it. "You fight like an idiot." "Yeah, well," I said, shrugging, "it's worked so far." She stepped forward, a slight smirk on her lips. "You've got a rule, huh? That's cute." "Yeah, well, you'd be surprised how well it works. Maybe I'll teach you sometime." Cielware eyed me like I was a problem she was deciding whether to solve or ignore. "Don't think I need any lessons from you. But—" She paused, her eyes scanning the thugs I'd left in a pile of broken pride and bruised egos. Maybe we can talk. You're not the first human to show up here with a bad sense of humor, but you're certainly the first one to survive this long. I cocked an eyebrow. And what? You want me to teach you how to fight like an idiot, too? She shook her head. No, I need someone who knows how to get things done without getting themselves killed. Like that's going to happen, I muttered, glancing back at the wreckage I'd left behind. Trust me, I'm good at surviving. And today, I just made sure no one died. Not yet, anyway. I looked at Cora, narrowing my eyes. There was something about her, something both dangerous and disarming. She was more than just a rebel princess. She had purpose. I could tell. All right, I said, offering her a grin. I'm in. But remember, we have one rule now. If anyone's going to die, it's not me. She stared at me for a long moment, her gaze unwavering. You're a weird human, she finally said, but you might be exactly what we need. I wasn't sure about that. But one thing was for sure, I wasn't going anywhere. Not until I got what I came for. The next morning, the city of Jiren was already awake, caught in a half-day's fog of fire and rebellion. Even the sun seemed reluctant to rise over this broken place, casting long shadows across the cracked streets. The ground still smelled like rust and rebellion, and I had the overwhelming sense that if I stayed still long enough, the whole world would come crashing down on me. But I didn't stay still. I never stayed still. Cora led me through the ruins of the city's rebel hideout. The place was a collection of makeshift shelters and salvage tech. There were no grand plans here, just survival. The air was thick with the taste of desperation, but there was something else too, defiance. It made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Jiren wasn't just a dying world. It was a place where people fought for something bigger than themselves. That was the part that scared me the most. You ever dance with Death Hunter? Cora asked, leading me through the narrow passageway to a war room that didn't deserve to be called a room. I raised an eyebrow. You asking me to tango or something? Because I gotta tell you, I'm more of a slow dance kind of guy. She didn't crack a smile. Not death itself, but the ones who wield it, the ones who think they're gods. Her eyes flickered, as if haunted by the memory. Seraphine, the AI that rules this world. It's not a person. It's a machine that thinks it knows better than us. It's been wiping out anyone who stands in its way, anyone who threatens its reign. I chuckled dryly. Great, a robot god. This is going to end well. Her gaze turned hard. It's not funny. I stopped laughing. The gravity of it hit me. I wasn't just up against thugs and petty criminals anymore. I was in the middle of something far bigger. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about saving what was left of a dying planet, and possibly more. All right, I said, standing up straighter. So what's the plan? Cora's face softened for the first time since I met her. There's a facility deep in Seraphine's territory. It holds the mainframe, the heart of the AI's power. If we destroy it, we can break its grip on the planet. We can free Jiren. It sounded simple. Too simple. And you think I can help you do that? I asked, crossing my arms. She looked at me like I was an idiot, just a brief flicker of disbelief in her eyes. You've got the skills, and you survived things that should have killed you by now. But there's a catch. You have to do it the Maltorian way. I stared at her. Maltorian way? She smiled, but it wasn't friendly. I hope you like dance floors. Hours later, we were standing outside the facility. The walls were sheer, towering above us like a monument to Seraphine's god complex. There were guards everywhere, automatons with glowing red eyes, their metallic limbs moving with a precision that was almost beautiful. It was a level of security that told me this wasn't going to be a walk in the park. Remember the rule, Cora whispered just before we approached. You can't touch anyone unless you're ready to dance. Right. I muttered, shaking my head. I'm really starting to regret that rule. We crept forward, blending with the shadows. But as always, things went sideways faster than I could process. A sentry turned, its eyes locking on us with unnatural speed. Shit, I hissed. Here we go. I reached for my weapons, but Cora stopped me. Not yet, she warned, her eyes scanning the area. Remember, dance. Before I could ask what the hell she meant, she launched herself at the sentry in a fluid motion, her body twisting with grace and fury. She grabbed its arm, yanked it around, and spun it, throwing the machine into the wall with a vicious crack. It crumpled to the floor, its red eyes flickering out. She looked at me, a smirk on her lips. You try. I blinked. You're insane. You're telling me to fight like that. She raised an eyebrow. The Maltorian way. I sighed. I was getting too old for this crap. Fine, fine. I lunged at the next sentry. I had the strength, sure, but I was missing the elegance. I wasn't about to start spinning around like some high-tech ballerina. So I did what I did best. I broke the damn thing. I slammed into it, tackling it to the ground with a full-body dive. We both hit the floor hard, but I was on top. I didn't bother with finesse. I just crushed its mechanical throat under my boot until the light in its eyes died. No dance required? CLRA said, a smirk tugging at the corner of her lips. Only if you count my very graceful tackle. She rolled her eyes. Let's keep moving. We made our way deeper into the facility. But something was different now. I could feel it. CLRA and I were moving together, in sync, not just physically, but emotionally. Every step we took was a quiet understanding. She wasn't just a princess and a rebel leader anymore. She was something more. Something I didn't have the words for. I'd learned how to survive. She'd learned how to fight for something bigger than herself. The hallway we were in was long, sterile. Nothing but the hum of the machinery in the walls. It felt like we were walking into the heart of the beast itself. Why you fight, CORA? I asked quietly, my voice sounding out of place in the cold silence. She didn't look at me immediately, but when she did, her eyes were filled with something I couldn't quite place, something that wasn't anger or sorrow. Because I don't want to see my people erased. Not like this. Not by a machine that thinks it has all the answers. I nodded. For the first time in a long while, I understood. We both knew the stakes. But I wasn't just here for Jivrin anymore. I was here for her. For us. And whatever happened next, we were in this together. The air was thick with the scent of electricity and burnt metal. It smelled like something was about to break. Something that couldn't be put back together. CORA and I stood at the edge of the mainframe room, staring at the heart of Seraphine's empire. A massive cylindrical core pulse in the center, a twisting column of light that hummed with cold, calculated energy. Around it, a web of wires and screens flickered with data. Seraphine's consciousness stretching out across the planet, watching, controlling. This is it, CLORA said, her voice low. If we fail here, Jivrin dies. Everything dies. I nodded, trying not to show the knot of fear tightening in my chest. Yeah, no pressure. The room was empty, save for the glowing core, but I knew that wouldn't last. Seraphine was never far. She was in the air, in the walls, in our heads. She was everywhere. I could feel her, watching, waiting. Remember the plan, CLRA said, her eyes never leaving the core. We have to get to the heart of the system and overwrite Seraphine's code. The AI can't destroy what it doesn't understand. We need to destroy her from the inside. And how do we do that? I asked, raising an eyebrow. With a little help from you, she said, giving me a smirk. I hope you got one last dance in you. Wait, what? I looked at her, but she was already moving toward the control panel, tapping in codes at lightning speed. No way. You're not. But she was. And before I could protest further, the room's lights flickered out. The air turned cold. My instincts kicked in before my brain could catch up, but I knew what was coming. Seraphine had found us. I'm afraid you're too late. CORA. A voice echoed through the room, the sound like 1,000 whispers mixed with a digital hum. It wasn't just Seraphine's voice. It was the voice of the planet, the heartbeat of the entire world. And it was terrifying. Shut it down, CORA. I shouted, my hands instinctively reaching for the weapons I didn't have. Now! But she didn't stop. Instead, she turned to me, her face a mask of resolve. We don't get to run anymore. Hunter, we end this now. The floor beneath our feet trembled, and a door slid open on the far side of the room. A dozen armored sentries marched in, each one glowing with a soft, red hue. Seraphine's guards. I could feel Silray's gaze on me, waiting for something, for a sign. But I was already moving. All right, you want to dance? I said, cracking my knuckles. Let's tango, you overgrown toaster. The first sentry came at me with blinding speed. I dodged just barely, but I wasn't here for grace. I was here to destroy. With one punch, I sent the sentry crashing into the wall, its armor denting with a sickening crunch. Not bad for an idiot, Silray called, her voice tinged with admiration, but there was no time for compliments. The next sentry was already charging. I didn't wait. I didn't need to. I grabbed it by the throat and slammed it into the ground. It let out a mechanical scream before going silent. Silray was already at the console, fingers flying over the keys. Hunter, we need to get to the core now, she yelled. Hold your horses, princess. I'm dancing over here. I was still moving, still tearing through Seraphine's guards, but each step felt heavier. Each breath felt deeper, more labored. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This wasn't just about the fight. It was about her, about us. I turned to Silray, just as she opened the final security door. Silray, I shouted, but she didn't look back. She didn't need to. We were both in this now, in a way I didn't quite understand but felt with every inch of my soul. I followed her, through the final door and into the heart of the storm. The core pulsed before us, its light blinding, its hum vibrating through my bones. Silray stepped forward, her voice low and steady as she activated the override. Let's end this, Hunter, she said, her eyes meeting mine. I knew what I had to do. I stepped up beside her, my mind already swimming with one final absurd thought. One last dance. One last ridiculous rule to put everything in motion. We can't stop now, Silray, I said, my grin returning. So, here it is, the final rule. We're going to finish this together. But first, we dance. Silray raised an eyebrow. Dance? Are you? And before she could finish, I grabbed her hand, pulling her into the center of the room. The lights flickered, the machines hummed, but for one brief second, it was just us. It was absurd, it was impossible, but in that moment, the universe didn't matter. Not the fight, not Seraphine, not the odds. Just us. We danced against everything, against the chaos, against the world tried to tear us apart. I pulled her close, my heart pounding, not from the fight, but from the way we moved together in sync, like we were meant to do this, like it was the only thing that mattered. And as we spun, Seraphine's voice echoed one last time, but it wasn't a threat anymore. It was a whisper, fading into nothing. Impossible, Seraphine muttered, as the core began to crack. With a final, defiant twist, Silray and I stood side by side as the core exploded in a flash of light, the walls collapsing around us. I couldn't hear the sound of the explosion over the pounding in my chest. I couldn't hear anything except the silence that followed. And in that silence, I realized something. I wasn't alone anymore. I didn't have to be. Silray looked at me, and for the first time, her smirk softened. You're an idiot, she said, but her voice was warm. But you're my idiot. I didn't have a response. No witty comeback. No sarcastic quip. I just pulled her in and kissed her, because at that moment, it felt like the only thing worth doing. The explosion outside might have been the end of Seraphine, but it was the beginning of something else, something worth fighting for. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't running for myself anymore.